Thank you.
You can start with letting you in.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Wonderful to be here and to see you all. A lot of you on this side. All right.
It's a summer thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing we're not on a ship, I'm just saying. Okay, we're going to start with the Bob over Nigun. Ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 ya da 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 one more time ya da 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 ya da 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 ya 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 da da da.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone. I know we are all coming off of the musical episode of Strange New Worlds, and that we're all just sort of flummoxed in different ways by what Star Trek is doing over the summer. But this is the time to withdraw from all of that, love it, hate it, just embrace the blessing of Shabbat. I'm not going to comment on the weirdness of how people arrange themselves over the summer. But glad to see you here. So, you know, we have to do our good and blessing and to find out how we're all doing as a community. So we'll begin with a few things going on that we know about here at the congregation. We know, for example, that Stephen and Jeanette DeBrow are celebrating their anniversary this week. And we have a number of birthdays. We have Russ Avshalom and Stephen Deutsch and Simon Manzuri and Daniel Sohm, Ashley Bender and Pam Feldman and Thomas Manzuri. I don't know how that worked out, but there we go, or why they're separated so far. And Brandon Webster. So a happy birthday to all of them. And now it's your turn. What good and blessing has been happening to you? How have you been blessed despite the heat, despite all the things going on that you might worry about? What has gone with you into this week? Yes?
My cooking repertoire continues to grow, learning how to cook fajitas, salmon. Might be influenced by me playing Cooking Mama all the time.
Nice, nice.
Delicious dinners.
All right, well, you know, salmon is something I've never mastered. I can do a decent fajita, but I'm happy to listen to your recipe. So that's all for the good. Anybody else have a, yes, Neil.
My parents just came today.
Oh, Mazel Tov. All right, and it meets your needs.
Yes, although the dalit on the head is like a bit tight. Like
Okay.
So I need to find a way to loosen it.
Yeah, you can do this.
Which I tried doing it, but then I was like, I don't have time for this. So.
But the Jewish catalog, maybe number 2, has the description of how to adjust your tefillah.
So it's like an S.
Yeah.
And so like you just pull it.
Right.
But I was like fiddling it for too long, so I just gave up at a certain point. But I will.
Okay.
I found
Yeah. No.
I found an instruction.
Take your time. Take your time. Anybody else have a blessing to report? How about over on this side? Yes, Richard.
I had the wonderful opportunity to speak with a former neighbor of mine who I knew from my street growing up in Youngstown, Ohio.
Oh.
So I haven't spoken with her probably in a year or so, but I've known her for about 65 years.
Uh-huh. Fantastic. Those old friends are just, yeah, they're wonderful. Yeah. Anybody else have something to share? Kate?
I got my class schedule and I have 6 classes with friends. And 2 no people I know.
Okay, there you go. All right, we'll take our good and blessing from wherever it comes. How are you? You have a good and blessing to share with us?
No, I just wanted to say hello.
Oh, I see. You just wait. All right, got it. All right. Well, so I am famous for oversharing. So I'll tell you right now that I have not resolved my anemia at this point, but I'm doing well. And I've been taking my pills, and on Monday I get my first iron infusion. So I'm hoping that in a week or more I'll feel like I've snapped back a bit. So if I peter out midway through service, just prop me up and tell me to pick up again. But I'm doing fine. All right, with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's my privilege to invite Dr. Nikki, who is not only our soloist tonight, but is also one of our hosts, to kindle the lights of Shabbat. Now, we're going to be in service number 2, so you're going to want to go to page 26.
A different light shines this day, a light pure and bright. Its glow is like that of an angel's. Its brightness fills my heart completely. I shall rejoice and be glad. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav V'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Yasher koach, dear. We're going to turn back now to page 24, bottom of the page. We sit here, newly gathered before the face of our God, joining together to worship the eternal and so sanctify our existence. How shall we begin to search, to reach for the sacred part of ourselves where rests the essence of all that is good? By stopping our concerns for those things which distract us all week long, by welcoming the Sabbath bride, and by opening ourselves to hear the message, oh so silent, carried to us by the small, still voice of God. We continue now with Dodi Lee, top of page 25.
Dodi li va'ani lo haro'e b'shoshanim. Dodi li va'ani lo haro'e b'shoshanim. Mitzvot olam mi hamidbar, mitzvot olam. Mi kutenet mor ulovana, Li baptini achoti kala, li baptini kala. Li baptini Achola kala, libati nikala. Uri safon, uviteman. Uti safon, uviteman. Dodili vani lo haroe bashoshanim. Dodili vani lo haroe bashoshanim.
Invoking the metaphor of God and Israel as lovers, we recite this lover's song. My beloved is mine, and I am my beloved, a shepherd among the lilies. Who is it that comes up from the wilderness, fragrant with myrrh and incense? Awaken, O north wind, come, O south wind. And so it is, we continue now on page 27 with Shalom Aleichem, welcoming the angels of Shabbat.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei Hasharet, Malachei Elyon. Ni Melech, Malachei Chamlachim, Katadosh Baruch Hu. Vo'echem Shalom, Malchei Hashalom, Malchei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malchei Chamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Baruchuni LaShalom, Malachei Hashalom, Malachei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malchei Chamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Tzechem LaShalom, Ma'el HaShalom, Malchei Elyon. Mi Melech, Malchei Chamlachim, HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Peace be to you, ministering angels, messengers of the Most High, the Majesty of Majesties, the Holy One of Blessing. Come to us in peace, bless us with peace, and go forth in peace. From Psalm 39. O God, you have searched me and know me well. You understand all my thoughts and every word upon my tongue. Your presence surrounds me. You touch me with your hand. Your presence exceeds my own perception. It is a wonder beyond imagining. We continue now with Hatzi Kaddish.
Yid Gadol, V'yid Kadash Shemei Rabbo.
Amen.
V'yamad Yivrach Yerutei, V'yamnech Mahutei. V'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayeteko beit Yisrael. Bagala, bagala, uv'yishman kariv. V'yimaru amen. Yeheshmei Rabbo mevorach, le'alal al me'amaya. Yitbarach, Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitraman, v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shmei kudashah, barihu. Leila min kol birchata v'tirata, tush b'chata v'nechemata, damin ran b'yama, b'yimaru, amen.
I apologize yawning an indecent amount, and it is not because I'm bored by any of you. It's just that my condition makes me tired. Stand up, everyone, please. I'm embarrassed.
Baruch hu et Adonai havorah. Baruch Adonai havorah. Le'olam va'ed.
Psalm 104. Bless the eternal, O my soul, O eternal my God, you are very great. You are clothed in glory and majesty, wrapped in light like a robe. You spread out the heavens like a tent cloth, and God sets the rafters of the high places in the waters. God makes the winds to be messengers, fiery flames to serve you. You made the deep cover the earth as a garment, and the waves to stand above mountains. You make springs gush forth in torrents, make the way between the hills. You water the mountains from your high places, the earth is sated from the fruit of your work.
The trees of the eternal drink
Your
their
own
fill.
fill, the cedars of Lebanon, your own planting, where birds make their nests, while the stork has her home in the junipers. God made the moon to mark the seasons, and the sun knows its time to set. Manifold are your works, O eternal. In wisdom you have made them all. May the glory of the eternal endure forever, and may you rejoice in your works. Blessed is the eternal, O my soul. Hallelujah. As I sing of one God, I rejoice in the wonders of this world, and I pray for the day when all people will be as one.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed.
You may be seated, and if you feel comfortable, join us in the V'ahavta.
V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavecha u'v'chol nafshecha u'v'chol me'odecha v'chayu hadvorim ha'eleh asher anochi mitzavecha hayom alevavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shivteka b'veitecha uv'lechtecha b'derek u'shachbeka uv'kumecha uchshartam laot ayadecha v'chayu latotafot b'neinecha uchtavtam amitutot beitecha u'visharecha Lema'an tizkaru v'asitem et kol mitzvotai v'yitem kedoshim le'ohechem Ani Adonai Elohechem Asher hotzeiti echem me'eretz Mitzrayim Liot lachem Elohim Ani Adonai Elohechem.
When a Jew speaks a word of prayer in love and in awe, the power of that word gives birth to God's glory. And the angels call out to God, "Who is like unto you?" How very great is the single word of such a prayer. It causes all the angels to sing. All worlds join with the one who serves the eternal. This is the meaning of the Micha Mocha. The one who sings a song below can arouse so many songs on high.
Yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai bim bum. Yai dai 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 dai, yai dai dai bim bum.
Yai dai yai dai dai yada dai bam bim bam. Yai dai yai dai dai yada dai bam bim bam. Mi chamocha bailim Adonai. Mi chamocha nedar bakodesh. Nora tehilot osei pele. Nora tehilot osei pele. Yai dai 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 yada dai ba bim bam. Yai dai 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 yada dai ba bim bam. Yai dai 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 yada dai ba bim bam. Yai dai 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 yada dai ba bim bam. Page 33, Hashkivenu in the middle of the page. This night grant that we lie down in peace, Adonai our God, and raise us up tomorrow, O Sovereign, to a life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel, and for your name's sake, be our help. Baruch atah Adonai haforeh sukat shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al Yerushalayim. I might imagine God as a teacher or a friend, but those images, like king, master, father, and mother, become too small for me now. God is the force of motion and light in the universe. God is the strength of life in our planet. God is the power moving us to do good. God is the source of love that springs up within us. God is far beyond what we can comprehend. I invite you now, if able, to please rise for tefillah.
Adonai, Sevatai Tiftach, Ufi Yagita Hilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'konei HaKol, V'zocher Chasei Avot v'Imaot, U'mevii Gula Livnei B'neihem, L'man Shemo v'Yahava, Melech Otzer Mashiach Magen. Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham v'Yitzchak Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayei HaKol atah Rav v'Hoshia, Mechalkel Chayim v'Chesed, Mechayei HaKol v'Rachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim v'Rofei Cholim, U'matir Asurim, U'mekayem Emunato, Lishanei Afar, Michamocha v'al Gevurot, U'midom Elav, Melech Memid U'mechayeh, U'matzliach Yeshua, Ne'eman atah l'chayot ha'kol. Baruch atah Adonai, Mechayeh ha'kol. Atah kadosh, Shemcha kadosh, Kadoshim b'chol yom v'chol chasela. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el ha'kadosh.
Please be seated, everyone. We continue by honoring Shabbat with Vishamru.
Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat la'asod et ha Lidoratam Barit Olam Vishamru V'nei Yisrael Et HaShabbat La'asod Et HaShabbat Lidoratam Barit Olam B'ni Uvein B'nei Yisrael B'nei Yisrael Oti Le'olam Vishamru V'nei Yisrael Et HaShabbat La'asod Et HaShabbat Lidoratam Barit Olam Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai et hashamayim v'et haaretz v'shamru v'nei Yisrael et hashabat la'asod et hashabat lidoratam barit olam uvayom hashvi Shabbat vayinafash Shabbat vayinafash Shabbat vayinafash Vishamru v'nei Yisrael et HaShabbat la'asod et HaShabbat lidoratam barit olam.
A prayer for acceptance. We reach out to you, O God, from our quiet places. May we stand still for a brief moment and listen to the rain. Stand still for a brief moment and watch the play of sunlight shadow upon the leaves. For a brief moment, listen to the world. We need a quiet space to test the balance of our days, the weight of our own needs against the heaviness of the world's demands. The balance is precarious. Steady us with faith. Quiet places and stillness where we hear our own best impulses speak. Quiet places and stillness where we will reach out to each other and we will find strength in silence. And with that strength, we will turn again to your service. There are times, O God, when I feel alone, and yet I know in my heart that I am never alone. You're always there, waiting for me to speak to you of my desires, my fears, my hopes and dreams. Yet, how seldom do I reach out to you to voice my gratitude for everything that is beautiful in my life, for all the gifts of my life. Love, family, friendship have come from you. But the greatest gift of all is your presence, which time and again has given me strength, hope, and courage. In the midst of doubt and confusion, I need to know that you are beside me, not only in the prayer book, but in the depth of my being, my friend, my strength, my God. We're going to close out with Shalom Rav on page 38, and then we're going to take a few moments for our own silent prayers and the offerings of our heart.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atahu melech adon lecho hashalom. Ki atahu melech adon lecho hashalom. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. B'tov b'neva livarech et amcha Yisrael b'cholei ub'chosha b'shlomecha shalom rava Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Shalom rava Yisrael amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Yehiyu liratzon imre fi v'hegion libi lefanecha lefanecha Adonai suri suri v'gali Adonai tzuri v'goali. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable to you, be acceptable to you. O God, my rock and my redeemer, O God, my rock and my redeemer.
So, we are now out of the 3 weeks of distress in which we read Haftarot that are highly critical of us as we come into Tisha B'Av. And just before Tisha B'Av, we heard chapter 1 of Isaiah, where Isaiah is his most critical and hectoring of the Jewish people, right up to the moment when he says, "Come, let us reason together." You got a little ring there. Let's pull that up, see if that helps. Which is hard to comprehend. It's really hard to reason with someone who's yelling at you all the time. And so now we're in the 7 weeks of comfort, which is meant to lead us into Rosh Hashanah, and we are going to be reading those passages of Isaiah where he says nice things to us. And it's a lovely comfort to everyone except rabbis who realize that Rosh Hashanah is rolling down on us very quickly. So, but then reasoning, let's go back to that. What is reasonable? So, in very dramatic events in Israel, for those of you, I can't believe anyone is not aware, but Israel for the last 7 months, pretty much since January, right up to today and continue on, has been in a constitutional crisis, which is so remarkable. You leave it to the Jews. How can you have a constitutional crisis when your country doesn't have a constitution? And yet it is a constitutional crisis. It is because, as legalists have pointed out, that Israel has something of an unwritten constitution, not unlike Great Britain, rather than a written one as we do here in America. So, and there have been a number of reasons for this crisis, the primary one being the formation of a government. I think it's fair to describe them as right-wing. I also think it's fair to describe that what Benjamin Netanyahu done is he's cobbled together a coalition of some of the most extreme peripheral politicians in Israel in order to create this coalition. And there has been an enormous reaction from many Israelis because they see in a number of the administrative decisions and the laws that the coalition is attempt to pass, that they see it as a threat to the democracy. And so they have been turning out in the tens of thousands, sometimes in the hundreds of thousands, protesting for the past 7 months. It has been pretty extraordinary to see. And I want to just add that it's a remarkable set of protests, one, because it's a protest that always features endless Israeli flags. So there is a definite message that the protesters feel like they are there on behalf of the country they love. But I've also managed, in a number of cases, to succeed in thwarting the government in doing some self-serving and self-rewarding policies and laws over the past 7 months. But now, right on the eve of Tisha B'Av, the government passed a law that limited the authority of the High Court to exercise some of its judicial review. Specifically, they are trying to close down what is known as the reasonableness doctrine. All right, so let me try and explain this because it takes some business to fathom. All right. Because Israel doesn't have a written constitution, it has no defined role for the Israeli High Court. It has a High Court, and it has a whole court system, but how does it play into the whole interactions with the Knesset, which is a parliamentary system, and whereas we in America have 3 different branches of government that have checks and balances on them, basically the Knesset has almost all authority invested in it. Its executive branch is actually a member of the Knesset, the prime minister. It's a parliamentary system. So really, the Israeli court sees itself as the only constitutional check upon what at worst we would describe as the tyranny of the majority. And since the 1980s, it has carved out a number of self-proclaimed entitlements of judicial review that allows it to intervene if it thinks that something's going wrong in the laws or the administration of the state. And for the most part, that's worked. But along the way, they put forward what's called the reasonable doctrine. And the reasonable doctrine goes something like this. Is the decision of the government, or is the law they've just passed, reasonable? I mean, what could be clearer than that? And, wanting to understand that there's 2 ends to every stick. This seems like a policy, a doctrine that invites easy abuse, right? Whatever 15 people decide is not reasonable will be nullified or negated. So you can understand why some people are uncomfortable with this. It actually draws upon something that is rather important in Israeli law, which is British law. You see, because the British controlled the land of Israel for a number of decades, British law has been incorporated into Israeli law. So when the High Court was looking for a way to sort of strengthen its role, it pulled right from the British. They have something called the unreasonableness law, which says that a court, not necessarily a high court, but a court can intervene if there is an unreasonable policy being put forward that hurts someone. And so in the absence of this, it has taken upon itself the right of making these kinds of judgments. So over its history, it has been used sparingly, which is the best thing you want from a judicial system. And it's been used in interesting ways. So to give you one example, there was a municipality, Sedot, which is over by the Gaza Strip, which is always being fired upon by the Gazans. And so the government came out with a policy that they were going to reinforce and fortify a select number of classrooms in the city of Sedot. And it was filed by the municipality. That's not fair. How come some of us get protection and some of our children don't? And so they requested, this is an unreasonable decision. It's a discriminatory decision. And in fact, the High Court said, you're right. They've either got to fortify everything or nothing, right? So in the cause of equality. All right. On the other hand, it's also been used, interestingly enough, in something that is not so popular in Israeli culture, which is the religious community. So in another case, a city which has a sizable Orthodox population has complains to the High Court because they have land and they want the city to fund a mikvah, which there's none there, so they have to travel farther away to get to a mikvah. And so they address the court and say, we're being treated unfairly because we deserve this thing that is part of our city. And in fact, the court ruled with them and said it's not reasonable for the city government to withhold this vital service for the religious residents of the community. But most of the anger has come from the right because they have used the doctrine a number of times to thwart a kind of overreach, a desire to maybe pass discriminatory laws, or probably the one that has most ticked off the government is that as part of a coalition deal, one of the new ministers would be a convicted felon who was convicted of corruption in taking money from the government. And so the High Court said, that's not reasonable that you should put a convicted felon in charge of a whole budget and things like this. This is not a trustworthy person. And that created coalition problems. So that's really what triggered this particular confrontation. So I want you to understand that one can see that part of whether this works or not is the context of whether who gets to determine what is reasonable? Is it being overused? Is it thwarting one particular government versus another? So we can understand that. And so this is what we find ourselves in. But it's also the case that the current Israeli government is made up of criminals and racists and military service evaders and people who are all three. And that in itself is an issue because it's pretty clear that Prime Minister Netanyahu formed this coalition in order to shield himself against his own prosecution, which is currently ongoing. Now, the protests have been pretty successful in thwarting some of these things. So attempts to immunize the Prime Minister didn't make it through the Knesset, in good part because the protesters really galvanized enough people in the Knesset to prevent that immunization from going forward. And it has worked a number of different times, but not here. Now we find that a significant constitutional privilege exercised by one branch of government has been seriously thwarted. And so people are mourning. The success of the protests up until this point have given people a lot. I mean, it's the worst of democratic government and the best of democratic government happening simultaneously. But now this is a major defeat. And it's interesting because I read my Israeli colleagues who talked in the aftermath of this law. By the way, just for that beautiful Jewish irony that goes on, the Israeli High Court theoretically has the authority to rule on the reasonableness of having their reasonable doctrine taken away from them. So it is not clear whether the High Court is going to exercise that prerogative, which will in fact probably amplify the constitutional crisis, which is happening even though Israel doesn't have a constitution. So I just want you to understand how Jewish this all is. All right. But I do want to share with you some of the thoughts of Israeli colleagues who have written to us in the aftermath of this particular confrontation. And one of them wrote, I want to talk to you Jews in the diaspora about hope. I want to talk to you about love. I want to talk to you about how hard it is to see a country one loves choose a dangerous path of self-harm. I want you to make clear to each other that democracy is just not the tiny, thin majority enforcing its will upon the minority, and that is true wherever we are in democratic institutions. So whenever one part of the human family falls, it affects us all. The people who will suffer most are those who are already weakest in Israeli society. Palestinians, LGBTQ, Israelis, women, the poor, the disadvantaged. These are the people who have lost their protection today. Democracy is not just by the people and of the people, it must also be for the people, all the people. But this is not the end, because we have hope. Because we have love. Thank you for loving us. We love you, and we don't want to stop fighting for our country. And then there is a woman rabbi who wrote, as you know, our country is burning. It is a sad and difficult afternoon here, and yet the protests brought many indifferent people out of the house to show how important this country is to them and how unwilling they are to give up democracy, civil rights, and in matters of religion and state. We really hope this protest will also lead people to choose by their feet and join the liberal movements of the reform movement. Okay, so it's a little self-serving. We have a lot of work to do in all fields, and the road is long, but the hope is 2,000 years old, and it does not end with one decision or another. There is a large movement of protest here, and alongside of it, a large movement of people who want to continue holding hands despite the differences. We, as the Reform movement and communities, are here in Israel to hold on to hope, even when darkness seems to be falling. And then there is, as hard as this is to see and watch from afar, and the reality is certainly very, very concerning, there are also huge waves of people working for a better Israel. And this is not the end, but a pit that we can climb out of, like our ancestor Yosef. Like all those who are struggling, we need friends and solidarity more than ever. The rabbis and the members of the Reform movement in Israel are on the front lines, and we hope that you support us. And then finally, do not despair. Continue to educate yourselves and your communities about the issues from both sides, which I think is important. To be leaders in dialogue. Come, let us reason together. To delve into all of Israel and recognize the dictum from the Talmud, Israel is responsible for one another. To talk about the dangers of sinat chinam, which is a famous phrase in the Talmud that means baseless hatred or relentless hatred. What is a reform progressive Zionism? It is what we do that can be supportive of Israel and supportive of democratic values. How important every single person is to the success of Israel, both those of us who live here and those of us who live elsewhere. Od lo abe hatikvatenu liot am chofshi. We have not lost our hope of being a free people in our own land. It's a line from Tikva, Hatikva. Our hope is not lost. And so, even though the democracy, progressive notions of Judaism have suffered a defeat, just realize it is not defeated. We are not defeated. We have 2,000 years of experience 3,000 years of experience being defeated. And look at us, we're still here. And so, as frustrating as it is, I choose to look not at the Knesset and not necessarily at some of the, I don't want to call them buffoons, because they're more dangerous than that. I don't want us to focus on that, even though they have the power at this moment. I would rather we look at the effervescence of Israeli democracy that is happening on the street. And what's happening on the street, I think, may be the harbinger of what is going to happen in the future. But Israelis still have to live with each other. So come, I hope they can reason together and we can reason together and find some middle ground for an understanding of what Israel is and what it should be becoming. Shabbat Shalom, everybody. So, time for announcements. Who's our officer tonight? Oh, Kenny. All right. Kenny is our psychopomp. All right? He is the escorter of souls to the place of death. Or actually, he's in charge of our cemetery. So, I'm going to turn it over to him.
All right, Shabbat Shalom, everybody.
Shabbat Shalom.
So we have announcements. So it's easier to read them. So that's what I will do. Religious school registration. It's hard to believe that, but our CKA religious school will be restarting this month, August 20th. In fact, less than 3 weeks from now. If you haven't registered your kiddos already, now's the time to do it. Pre-registering helps the religious school prepare for class sizes and to acquire everything we need for the first day of school. You can register on our website. Thank you, and we're looking forward to seeing everybody in less than 3 weeks. Okay, we need you. Speaking of the religious school, if you ever have had an interest in teaching at CKA, it's a wonderful place. Now is your time. We are looking for a teacher to lead the 3rd grade class. Teachers will have full access to ISJL curriculum and support from the teachers and staff who are around during the religious school day. You do not need to have a background in education or Jewish education at all. Our curriculum is set up to help you learn along with your class if you're not feeling confident in your background. If you have any interest, please contact Casey Frankbaum. High holidays are coming, just a little bit further than the school start. So the choir needs voices. Calling all shower singers, Shabbat songsters, or anyone who has been told they can hold a tune for this year's High Holiday Choir. The CKA High Holiday Choir is looking for new and returning members for the 5784 choir. You do not need to have any experience or background in music to participate. Contact our favorite person who does school in the month of September, Casey Frankbaum, if you have any questions or to join. Tikkun Olam is not collecting medicine bottles anymore. Seems that the people who used to take them don't want them. So we're not going to collect them at the shul. Thank you for all who have donated. Over the last year, we've sent hundreds of bottles off to be reused in various countries around the world. If you would like to send your used bottles for reuse, please check the week's blast for the link to donate, or you can go to the website and find that link. Congregation Kol Ami has changed our oneg process. Families will be able to pick a date when they would like to host instead of just being assigned one and then doing, walnut shells with each other. You will be able to sign up on the website under member tools. You may host or provide food directly, or you can sponsor an oneg with a minimum donation of $40. But let everybody know that you're not going to be here, so appropriate people can go buy stuff if you're not going to be here. Please help us with this important mitzvah and sign up on the website now. We want to make sure we have coverage on every Friday night, so please don't wait. We need your help with this. As everybody knows, the website is important.
What's your last name?
So it starts
Web.
webman, website. I don't do software. But the website is very important because it communicates when you can't get hold of Bob, because he likes to hide behind walls on Friday nights. And you can find out all kinds of stuff, including your balance to the temple and everything else that's going on that's wonderful. So don't hesitate going on to the website and looking around. So we have our Mishabarach list for tonight. And on the list is Joyce Bloom, Natalie Bovino, George Cavanis, Mark Davis, Francine Feingold, Joe Friedman, Carolyn Goodman, Deborah Goodman, Michelle Griffith, Molly Kalig, John Kaufman, Deb Kaufman, Lauren Koenig, Alex Koenig, Al Landon, Matt Levin, Phyllis Lorelli, Fran Mastiri, Steve Meyerdirk, Mal Miller, Anthony Naria, Jack Nygren, Paul Redwood Jr., Helen Rubel, Adrian Sandler, Dale Seaver, Susan Tabor, Happy Waterman, and Howie Watt. So may the blessings for them to get all well flow from us. And I'm not a singer. So.
Other names?
Yeah, are there other names? Please, start over here.
Harris Smith, Reggie Martin.
Susie Jenkins.
Scott Bender,
Catherine Friend, Stacy Butler.
Olivia Hood.
Me and Ron.
Good. Please join me in the Misha Berach. It's on your program or it's on page 79 in your book. Misha Berach Avotenu Mikor Abraham Limotenu. May the source of strength who blessed the ones before us help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Misha Be'era Imotenu Mekor Avraham Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body
did seem like an extended self-promotion. All right. Well, it's time for us now to celebrate once again the conclusion of our service with the Aleinu and the Kaddish. And for who shall I select? I think I'm going to call on Don Dawsey. He's here every Friday, every Sunday, the man watching the door. We are so grateful for that. Please come on up, and I invite everyone else, if able, to please rise.
Aleinu Shabbat Ladon HaKol, Latei Gilai Yotzer Bereshit, Shelo Asan B'Goyei Harasos, V'lo Samanu B'Mishpatot Adama, Shelo Sam Kelkeinu Kahem, V'Gor Aleinu K'chol Havonah. V'anachnu korim u'mishtachavim u'modim lifnei Melech Malchei HaMelechim HaKadosh Baruch Hu shehu notei shamayim v'yoser haaretz u'moshav yikaro b'shamayim imam u'shkinas uzo V'go Meroni U'Eloheinu Eloheinu Emes Malkeinu Efes Ulato Karatu B'Torato V'yadata Hayom V'hashivota El Levavecha Ki Adonai Hu Elohim B'shamayim imah V'haaretz mitachat Eino
Yom Hahu, Bayom Hahu, Yeh Adonai Echad, U'Shemo, U'Shemo, U'Shemo Echad. Now is our time to remember our dead and to honor them and to offer our sympathy to those who mourn for them. In that spirit, we know of two people in the congregation, connected to the congregation, who passed away in the last week. Joe Armon, the husband of Simeon Armon, who died this week, and also Robert Hardwick, the grandfather of Geneva Holmes. Is there anyone else who has lost a loved one in the last 7 days? For Shloshim, we're thinking of Selma Metzger-Harden, the friend of Melissa Hart. Is there anyone else suffering a loss in the last 30 days? And for this week, we want to remember Miriam Turchin-Assman, Bella Biller, Matthew Sand, Winnie Bond, Julia Ekber, and Robert Singer, all of whose yahrzeits occur this week. Is there anyone else with a yahrzeit in their family or among their friends? All right. All these people we recognize. We also show our support for them and the living by rising together to recite Kaddish on page 85. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayechon uv'chomechon uv'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael b'galal u'mizman kariv v'yimru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach le'elam u'la'amei amaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh v'yithadar v'yithaleh v'yithalal shmei d'kudsha b'richu le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata Shushbahata v'nehemata, damiran be'elma v'imru, amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'el kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. Osei shalom b'bramav, hu yaseh shalom, aleinu ve'el kol Yisrael, v'imru, amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn, and comfort all the bereaved among us. And let us all say,
Amen.
please be seated, and our closing song is
Shalom Chaverim.
Shalom
Why don't we do it
Chaverim.
3 times.
We should try and be friends despite the things that, with the differences between us. So,
Shalom Chaverim, Shalom Chaverim, Shalom, Shalom, Lahid Rod, Shalom, Shalom, Shalom Chaverim, Shalom Chaverim, Shalom, Shalom, Lahid Rod, Shalom, Shalom. Now in a round. Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim, Shalom Haverim,
Lahitro,
Lahitro, Lahitro,
Shalom,
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, everyone.